For each bottle bag you will need 1 fat quarter for the outer layer, 1 fat quarter for the inner, some hook and loop tape, otherwise known as Velcro, and some iron-on interfacing. Now, this is medium weight, just gives your bag a nice sturdiness. I thought I'd show you just how I'm going to cut my pieces out. Each side of the bag is going to be 40 centimetres by 20. We need 2 of these in the one fabric, 2 in the other. So I've made myself a pattern just because I'm going to be making a lot, but you could just chalk the measurements onto your fabric. So I folded over my fat quarter, and this is the shortest side, this is the longest side. So I haven't folded it lengthways, I've folded it across the way, but only enough for me to use the fabric doubled over. This little bit here I can keep for the handles. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut out myself 2 pieces in my main and 2 pieces in my lining. I'm going to cut 2 handles. I'm going to cut interfacing and I'll be back with you. For each bottle bag you will need 2 pieces of your main fabric, cut 20 centimetres by 40, and I've applied my medium weight interfacing onto the back of that. Same again for the lining, 20 by 40, no interfacing this time. Although if you want your bag really sturdy, you could interface both sides. My handle is a strip which is 10 centimetres by about 40-45, just whatever I had left over. I've started that off by folding in half lengthways and pressing with the iron. Then I've opened up and folded the edges into the centre. Again, press that with the iron. Then I'll fold again, so the 2 folded edges together, and press again. So now I can start sewing. First thing I'm going to do is edge stitch down each side of the handle. The edge stitch is a very close stitch, about 2 or 3 millimetres from the edge. And I'm going to use this little inner notch on my presser foot. But if your foot isn't shaped like this, then a zip foot is quite good to give you a close edge stitch as well. And just a regular size stitch, 2.5 millimetres. And the other side to make it look balanced. Now I'm going to sew my 2 outer bag sections together down one long side, across the bottom, turn and go back up the other side. I'm going to use 1 centimetre seam allowance, which is the 10 millimetre marking on my machine. So to reverse at the beginning. Across the bottom. And back down the other side. You'll notice the patch in my interfacing, I didn't have quite enough to finish one piece, so slightly overlapped it. And that's going to be absolutely fine. Right, I'm going to repeat that for the lining, but when I do the lining, I'm going to leave a hole down one side or the bottom for turning. So I've made the lining, or rather stitched the two lining pieces together. Stitched all the way down one long end, again using a 1 centimetre seam allowance or 10 millimetres, pivoted on the corner, right across the short bottom end. There we go, short bottom end, and right across the other long side. So now we were ready for the corners. So white one first, since I've got my ivory thread. So we're going to open out the corners, like so, and we're bringing the side seam together with the bottom seam. So you may want to spread the seam allowances open. Like so. We have this point, like a pyramid. So I'm going to pin that just now. And if you pin through one seam, you should be able to bring your pin through on the other side. There we go. I'm going to pin the other corner in the same way. So I'm sorry about this uneven lighting today. It's a beautiful sunny day outside. It's a lovely crisp autumn day, but the sun is not the friend of my video camera. I don't have my background lighting with me today. Okay. Right, so I better not eyeball this, so I'll just go and grab my ruler and do it accurately. So what we have now is the inner layer with the corners pinned, so I need to flatten these out and just make sure they're going to be even. There. I'm going to sew across to make a boxed corner, and I want to do it about 9 centimetres. So I'm measuring until I can get 9 centimetres across with the seam in the middle. So the seam needs to be 4.5, that's it. And this is my fabric marking pen, my actually heat erasable one. So that's my line marked, it's my stitching line. And I can do the same on the other side. There we go, 4.5, 9. So I'm going to sew that, and I'm going to repeat with the other layer. So that's my 4 corners sewn. So I'm just going to trim off the excess at the corner. I've left about a centimetre, and we can remove some of that bulk to neaten up those seam allowances. Again, trim the corners. I always prefer to use my little embroidery scissors for trimming rather than my large fabric shears. I'm far less likely to chomp down into something I shouldn't be chomping down into. Okay, so now for the assembly. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a press with the iron first. So after a press, these are corners. I was able to pop this over my little sleeve board. So I've flattened out these side seams there, flattened these out. Also turned over a small hem at the top, about 2 centimetres. It's just less than an inch. So that's the lining. The outer bag I've turned the right way out, right side of the fabric out the way. Again, I've pressed it so the side seams are lying flat. I've pressed the bottom corners, pressed those flat. Then I've also given it this crease here from corner to corner. So it's forming more of a cube shape at the bottom. And this is the one with the interlining in it, you remember? So it's quite crisp. It's quite a crisp handle. Then I've taken the edges, again I've turned over a hem into the inside and taken these edges, so folded in about halfway across, then the same, so side seams into the middle about halfway across, like so. And that starts to form a slight flattened shape at the top, like that. If you're not sure, have a look at a purchased paper carrier bottle bag and the hem. So I'm going to put the lining inside. The corners in. Make sure you've got your 2 stitched corners together. and bring the top edges together. Matching side seams, side seam to side seam. And we want the lining to sit just below the level of the top. And I'm going to pin that in place all the way around. If you've done your job properly, both bags should be exactly the same size and they should line up very neatly. Now before we sew this together, we just need to pop the handles in, or you could sew that up and put the handles on, surface mount them. I like to put them in between the two layers. So I'm going to take my handles. Now I made one long strip and I've cut it into 2 pieces. It's quicker to do it that way. And we can pop the end in. And the other one. Check for evenness, this needs to go a bit long. Other one. So there we go, our bag's taking shape. So I'm going to sew all the way around that outer edge, encasing the handles in at the same time. So I'm going to sew from the inside so that I can see where the lining is, because I want a very fine, even edge showing just above the lining of the top fabric. Now I've actually put white thread in the top, or rather cream thread, and I've got my red in the bottom. So the thread is going to be disguised on each side. For some reason I always want to start on a side seam, although it actually doesn't matter one jot. And again I'm going to use my edge stitch guide on my foot and keep manipulating the fabric as I go to keep it even. Now I'm just having to sew a little bit and then move my fabric around, again, making sure that the edge is even all the way around. Make sure anytime you're sewing you don't have any pins on the underneath of your fabric, because if they do, they're quite likely to get snagged in your feed dogs, and they can do your machine quite a bit of damage. Beginning. Now, while I have the thread set up the way it is, I'm just going to go back and do another row of stitching across each of the handles, just a little further down, just to reinforce them. I would hate that lovely gift of wine crashing to the pavement. And finally trimming my threads. Right, now we could call that done. There's our lovely bottle bag, but I'm going to pop a little bit of Velcro. Other hook and loop fasteners are available, but I just think a little bit of fastener across there, or you could use a button or some press snaps. So let me go and grab my Velcro. Right. A little word about hook and loop tape. When you're trying to sew it on, it's much more easy if you use your zip foot. If you don't have your zip foot on, you have your standard foot. Again, the foot is sitting on top of the, especially the hook side, the rough side. Your foot is sitting on top and it tends to wobble about and makes the whole job very difficult. So I find that using my zip foot and my needle to the left position means that your foot doesn't have to sit on the Velcro. It can sit off to the side and you can just sew down the edge. Also, the sticky Velcro will not stick to fabric for very long. So if it's something you're constantly opening and closing, sticky Velcro doesn't work. And if you try to sew through the sticky Velcro, it will really gum up your needle and the machine just doesn't like it. So I'm going to position my first side. Let's get the hook side on first, the worst bit. So I'm going to pop that on the inside of my bag, roughly between the two handles. Now I'll try and put a pin through, but it's quite difficult to pin through. It's quite tough. Right, now again, I've still got my cream thread in the top and my red on the bottom, so the stitching isn't going to show on either side. So there we go. I can line my needle up. My needle is just on the edge of the Velcro. And I'm just sewing around the perimeter. Okay, don't go too close to the cut edge, so needle in, pivot round, down across the short side. First side done. Let's see where we want the second side of the Velcro to be. And repeat with the next side of the Velcro. So there is my bottle gift bag. All that remains now is to pop a water bottle in there and carry it along to the party.